Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 177 of the Citrix Session. I'm your host for today, Bill Sutton. I'm the director of Modern Workspace with XenTegra. For those of you who are not regular listeners, for those of you who are, thank you very much. For those of you who are new, we will be covering a blog article from Citrix, and with me to help is Todd Smith of Citrix. Todd, Todd, you want to introduce yourself real quickly? I know you've got a new title.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Bill. Yep. My name's Todd Smith. I'm just recently promoted to a senior manager for the Account Technology Strategists within the public sector for North America. So, covering Canada, a variety of different U.S. government organizations, as well as several states. So, my team is growing, but we've also pulled in kind of a reorg. We've also added some resources from our professional services team into my team as well. So working with some of the customers that are on long-term professional services engagements. Um, but great to be able to join you today, Bill. It's been a while.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you joining, Todd. So before we get into the content or the topic for the day, why don't we just take a step or two or three back and tell the audience what is an ATS?
So an ATS is an account technology strategist, which is really kind of a combination of uh, three three important functions. One of them being a sales engineer, right? So that's traditionally what we were, and it was really focused on those pre-sales engagements. But we found that a lot of the SEs were also getting involved in post-sales activities, making sure the customers are using what they purchased. The traditional customer success management track of,
Right,
hey, I just bought this stuff. How do I make it work?
right,
Type of scenarios. Um, because in a subscription world, you want to make sure that you're using what you're paying for, else you're not going to renew what your licenses are. And then the third kind of key leg of the three-legged stool is really around that customer support. Um, Being able to escalate support issues, being able to bring in additional resources to do things like health checks and architecture workshops and direct access to product management. So really kind of bringing those three core components into one position or one role,
hmm
and really kind of being the quarterback of the entire customer facing organization, and being able to work with our sales reps to make sure the customers are successful in doing what they're doing, and also being able to see intrinsic value in what they've purchased and what we can deliver to the customers, or what we're doing for customers. Um,
Yep.
so that's
So a
kind
big,
of the role.
yeah, so a big part of that, I think, Todd, and I think this is key, is helping customers to understand what they have, what they purchased, but also within that purchase, Citrix keeps adding. This is a
Yeah,
positive thing. Keeps adding
absolutely.
new technology to expand the use cases, to expand capabilities, and I
Yep,
think part of the trust. Correct me if I'm wrong. Part of the ATS's role has helped them to understand that and help to kind of forge a
yep,
partnership to get them to move to
yeah,
to leverage those technologies that they're effectively paying for.
absolutely, Bill. And being that consistent face of Citrix
Right.
to the customer, um, obviously, we've gone through a period of uh, some challenges, but also we've
Sure.
also gone through a period of significant growth when it comes to acquiring new products and acquiring new technologies that needs to be communicated to customers in a fairly rapid pace, and not just have to wait until some type of quarterly business review with the customer,
Right.
or you know wait until their renewals coming up next and then say, oh, by the way, we've had this for a year, you should have known about this, or we should have told you about this earlier, type of thing. Because once again, these are capabilities that are being added into our portfolio on a regular basis.
Mhm.
And the most important part of it is that oftentimes we're not charging any additional fees for this new features that are being added into our universal or platform licenses.
Right. Exactly. Good stuff. Good
Yeah.
stuff. All right, so we'll move into the topic of the day. We're going to cover a blog article that was released around March 19th. This was in a concert with the Citrix UNITE
Yeah.
meetings held in, where were they? New Orleans. Yeah,
In
I've
New
been
Orleans.
traveling so much. I
It's been
almost said
it's been a
Florida.
while.
Yeah, about a month ago or so in New Orleans. The article is entitled "Citrix and NVIDIA Partner to Deliver AI Virtual Workstations," and it's written by Sridhar Mullapudi, who is
Yep.
one of the co-CEOs of the Citrix unit within Cloud Software Group. He's been around Citrix a while, hasn't he, Todd?
He has. He's probably one of the few guys that actually predate me joining Citrix, as I just hit my beginning of my 19th year.
Wow.
But Sridhar has been with us, and he and Hector Lima both share the
Right.
co-president role within Citrix as an organization under Cloud Software Group. But Sridhar's, if you look at what we've acquired over the past several quarters and certainly the past year and a half. A lot of that, well, almost everything has had Sridhar's fingerprints on it.
Okay.
As far as adding value to our existing portfolio and our existing platform and licensing model. And the relationship that we have with NVIDIA and really dealing with customers that are looking into putting AI and some of those high performance
Hmm.
computing requirements directly into their strategy, and not just have it be, not just having AI being run by the nerds in the back room. These are end users that are having access into AI solutions. So this is really exciting areas.
Yeah, so Citrix and NVIDIA have been partners for a while. This is a relatively new collaboration that is focused, like Todd said, on empowering and delivering artificial intelligence or AI, generative AI, but it could be other types of AI as well,
Yep.
um, through NVIDIA virtual GPU technology. Now, for those of our listeners who've been around a while, we've been able to virtualize the GPU for a while, mostly on NVIDIA, but not exclusively. I know that I've done a number of projects where but it's almost always been graphics focused. So the ability to accelerate the delivery of high graphics, maybe CAD, CAM type workloads, those sorts of things. But this is different, Todd, isn't it? I mean, I think it'll do the same thing, but it's really focused on more on AI workloads, right?
Yeah, and if you look at it, the AI workloads are built differently than a traditional
Yeah,
graphics workload,
yeah,
even though they use the same processing power.
right.
Um, it's leveraging, it's leveraging a lot more parallel processing as opposed to the serial processing that we're used to. Um, it's doing data searches as well as trying to do some computations along the way.
Right.
The the challenge, though, is that a lot of time was being spent on building these unicorns out there for every customer. And what this is going to allow us to do is really bring together the Citrix desktop as a service capabilities and also leveraging the NVIDIA RTX virtual workstation into one solution that can be used to develop and deliver AI applications and being able to use a combination. It's not just a everything has to be in the cloud. It can actually leverage local resources within your data centers and also within your local devices, right? Your endpoints can be brought into the mix as well.
Hmm.
Um, this also allows you to put up some guardrails between what's going on in the cloud areas, the World Wide Web and the internet, as well as being able to leverage some of the restrictions and compliance programs that keep certain data within your control. Um, so there's a couple of things here. As we look at how this would all work, and
Right.
we we want to be able to take advantage of some of these solutions that are already available by doing really three things. One of them is securing your AI work, your AI development work. Second one is really being able to leverage an AI workload isolation. And then the third thing is really helping it manage cost and time savings while being scalable. So if we take a look at the first one with securing AI development work, you know, the concern that a lot of organizations have is around, okay, how do I do AI but do it securely? And this is where our overall ZTNA process or ZTNA approach, which is zero trust network access, which is really being able to leverage all of the capabilities that Citrix brings to the market and being able to do something that we have been doing for 30 years is really being able to ensure that we can safeguard not only the models and also provide observability into what's going on, but also being able to really, with the end goal of being able to protect not only the data in the systems that are running locally, but also being able to kind of protect it from an AI perspective as well, which can be simple things like requiring you to do searches within a secure environment that maybe you run it on a virtual machine that's inside your Citrix environment. It could also be something as simple as making sure that all of the data that's going in and out is passing through a more secure firewall, like a web app firewall or um, some type of scanning capabilities, right? So being able to leverage something that we're already doing with our NetScaler platforms and our historic platforms to be able to leverage that. Um, the second one is around leveraging that workload isolation, right? So being able to control the communications that are happening, reducing those attack surfaces, reducing the ability for malicious software to get in there, and eliminate the need for the opportunity for malware to kind of spread between all of the as part of your data packaging. Um, Once again, this is something that we have been doing as a company for many years. Um, and then the other piece of it, and this is kind of the more interesting piece of it, is that when you start looking at the compute power and the processing power and the cost associated with doing AI workloads, specifically in cloud-based environments, you have to start worrying about what's the overall cost going to be. How frequently do I need to be able to spin it up and spin it and take it down? In being able to still make sure that I have that highly secure, high performance environment, and then being able to scale those up and scale those down as needed. This is where, this is what we're doing to help make this a viable solution for a lot of customers.
Yeah, I get it. So, I mean, to really kind of summarize what you said just now, I mean, it sounds like this solution or this collaboration is there's a lot of things going on here. I mean, obviously, the security element is an important one. Being able to isolate the AI environment, and then of course, like you said, cost and scalability. But I'm curious, Todd, this strikes me as a lot from a developer perspective. When you're developing, you're working with a model and you're developing your AI solution, the ability to run that in a virtualized environment obviously gives developers kind of time shared access, if you will, without having data on their endpoint or that has the ability to leak or to be compromised. I'm curious about does this solution actually, at least in some way, is it in some way able to leverage the new capabilities of some of these not Copilot, but these AI workstations that are running the new, what do they call them, NPUs, or neural processing units?
Yeah, it will, and
Okay,
that's certainly one of the areas that we're going to be working with, you know, partners like NVIDIA to
right.
help expand that even further, right? As we start looking at where those workloads and where those large language models are actually being computed on, you're going to start seeing a lot more endpoints having NVIDIA chipsets built into them, right?
Ah, mhm.
Not just the gaming platforms, right? I look at my son's got a more powerful computer than I ever had in the data center when I was running data centers, but that's because he's also a fairly successful professional gamer. Um, and that that is really becoming his workstation that he plays games on is going to become the kind of the standard for an AI enabled workstation because it has the processing capabilities built into it to be able to offload some of those workloads and being able to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to pull down data sets or I'm going to start doing some of the queries from my endpoint as opposed to running it in the cloud someplace because my endpoint may have some of the data that I need that I don't want to push up into the cloud. So there's a variety of different kind of paradigms that are being consolidated here. It's the ever changing situations of where we're doing work, but also where physically we're doing work, but also where in a technology or holistic approach where that work is actually being done, whether it's being done in the cloud or in the data center or on an endpoint
Right.
device. For a user, it shouldn't really matter as long as it's secure, as long as it's fast, and as long as it's reliable.
Yeah. So the next section here is the immediate benefits to Citrix customers. So it's interesting in reading through the article, makes reference to the fact that you can leverage existing NVIDIA GPUs, assuming they're of the right model, I suppose,
Yep.
the right version, in your environment to start prototyping or POCing AI apps, leveraging those same GPUs that you've been perhaps using for other things, or they can be repurposed, or you can obviously implement new. But this gives the customers the ability to approach the strategy differently. And the first one, I'll let you comment on all of these, Todd, of course. But the first one, more confidence than ever. This is one that kind of hits home because I've read a lot about the public LLMs and how they have a tendency to learn from the prompts and the results of the prompts. And customers have to be very careful about putting, and this is a warning that goes out in a lot of organizations. If you use AI, generative AI, make sure you don't put any proprietary information in your prompt. Because some of the public LLMs, and there's been news articles about people getting fired because IP ended up in one of the public LLMs, and by leveraging this technology, that it's designed in a way that it'll protect the users and administrators from that occurring, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a great example of this is what's happening. Just started seeing this over the weekend. Everyone's social media is starting to pop up with these little AI generated action figures of who you are and what your interests are. All it's basically doing is doing a search on the back end. It's doing a search on all of the public websites about what you like, what you want to
Right.
see, and it's pretty. They're looking at your images. They're looking at your little action figure, or at least the representation of your action figure can get pretty damn close, and it shows up some of your hobbies and what your interests are and things like that, which is pretty dangerous that these public LLMs are really the amount of data they have access to initially. Now flip that over to a business discussion and you start thinking, as you mentioned earlier, Bill, about the, people getting in trouble for leaking intellectual property. Well, if I went to a large language module and did a search on how to configure a NetScaler as an example, I have to be pretty trustful of those sources where it's getting that information from, right? So you still need to be able to check and see what's coming back as some of those responses to those queries that we're putting out there, those prompts.
Yeah, and this solution allows customers to create their own, maybe not
Yep.
create their own LLMs, but create their own environment. Maybe they use a public LLM or a sanitized LLM,
Yep.
and then build all the algorithms and the prompt engineering and all of that goes into it, and keeps it in their enclave, as it were, so that
Exactly.
none of those queries, none of that data gets leaked out to the public. So the second item under this category is additional value in your GPU investment, and kind of already talked about this a little bit, but the ability to develop and run and run POCs by leveraging GPUs already running in the environment. You want to comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think a lot of organizations that they've started investing in GPUs, whether it be part of their DAS environment or part of their overall just a VDI environment. But we're also seeing investment in GPUs on the endpoints as
Right,
well. We
right.
want to make sure that a customer can realize and continue to see value in those investments by identifying kind of an additional use case for them to use those endpoints or use those resources for, it's not always the intended purpose that they purchase them for, but in some cases they can actually, get some additional value by using it for another use case or additional use case.
Yeah, and then the last thing indicated here, enhanced security. Obviously, allowing the users to interact with their app, their AI apps within the confines or the borders of the
Yep.
Citrix platform. Obviously, kind of goes back to the if you arguably the original model, which is the original Citrix model, which is run all your applications in the data center. And this kind of is a twist on that a little bit because you can allow interaction, right, Todd, with the local device over
Correct.
that ZTNA or that SPA, whatever connection, to allow some shared processing to provide the best performance, but still maintain the security that's needed.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think overall, everyone wants to find a ways to control where people are getting their data, especially when you start looking at where on the where in the internet can I go and find additional reliable sources of data that I can then utilize for, you know, my company's business, and being able to say, hey, is this a credible source? If it's not a credible source, then we want to find a way to automatically block access to it,
Yeah.
or at least restrict access to it until we can actually review it and then determine if it's a block or not.
Yeah.
It's very similar to the way we used to have remote people coming into our access. We wouldn't grant them immediate access. We would put them into a quarantine environment so we could run a series of scans against the endpoint. And then once they've been validated, let them in. Um, it's a tried and true method, but it works. And it's something that, almost every single organization has some form of that least privilege access model where they start granting access based on a history of good behavior to get them direct access.
Yeah. So the last section is really just is kind of a summary in a way. That just talks about the
Yeah,
partnership with NVIDIA and Citrix. And that clearly here, this is another example of Citrix innovating along with a partner to drive development and consumption of AI, which is I was out of town for the past 5 weeks. 3 of those weeks were at conferences, and I heard AI a number of times at every conference. So we're hearing that, of course, a lot, and it's becoming ever present in our workday. So really solid thing to see Citrix continuing to innovate and partner to
yeah.
help drive AI adoption.
And it's really interesting how mainstream AI has become. And I'll give you a quick example.
Yeah.
Um, you know, a lot of these conferences, especially the internal conferences such as sales and partner kickoff meetings and things
Right.
like that for the year, a lot of that content was developed, and then you would have to follow up with some type of questionnaire, or you would have to follow up with some type of a meeting with your manager to determine how much you absorbed during that conference. And then sometimes you were, you know, filling out another course or having to go through another follow-up, series of quizzes and checkpoints. We just implemented a solution that has AI on the back end, and you're actually having during your follow-up session or your follow-up task. You're going through an AI kind of environment where you're talking with someone and you're presenting what you learned at the conference, and then it's kind of doing some grading, it's giving you some feedback, it's giving
Huh.
you a lot of information that you can then use. Now, traditionally that would take up to 6 months to do.
Right.
in the old way of doing things. It was a lot of it was paperwork. A lot of it was, individual manual labor having to go into this. Now with the the inclusion of AI into the work stream, you're able to get almost immediate results. It's comparing all of the people who are doing these tasks at the same time and coming up with, hey, here's some areas that we need to focus on. Here's some areas where we need some reinforcement. And more importantly, it's almost an immediate return on investment to the folks that are creating the content for these sessions to see how effective those readiness opportunities or those readiness activities were in enablement activities. So it's been interesting. This is once again, this is how AI has been working its way into here. We're seeing a lot of organizations using AI for some of their customer relationship management activities, whether it be booking appointments or whether it be a lot of the self-help chatbots that are out there on support sites and things like that, where, some of my customers are using those for their call centers, and they're actually getting a lot of valuable information back on what the customers are asking for and where they're having problems. So they can identify where there's some need for additional focus, or what are some of the common questions that are coming up that need to be answered. And that's a learning opportunity as well.
Fascinating, Todd. And interesting that y'all are taking that approach. And it's a great way to get feedback and understand what's learned at conferences and so forth rather quickly. So just demonstrates how everything's moving faster. I mean, my experience with AI has principally been with obviously initially ChatGPT, but I've got a Copilot license, so I use that rather frequently to assist with presentations and drafting emails and things of that nature, just putting polish on them. But that's just scratching the surface at this point.
Yeah.
A lot more we can do with them, and this is an example of that. So any final thoughts? This is a pretty quick one, which is kind of what I expected from this article. But
So once again, it's great getting a chance to get back in the cadence with you, and
likewise.
Hopefully next week we'll be able to get Jeremy back online, and potentially Andy. I know Andy and Jeremy did a great job last week on their session, but there's a lot of announcements coming out from Citrix, a lot of information, and I will give a shameless plug here. Reach out to your Citrix account team, reach out to your partners like XenTegra. There's a lot of information that's coming out of these, whether it be acquisitions or changes in the technology space overall, that we're, doing a lot to make sure that happens, and make sure that we're keeping abreast of all of those things. So if you have any questions, you how to reach out to XenTegra or Citrix directly.
That's right. All right, Todd. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill.
Talk to everybody soon.
Take care.
Bye.